Got my shades on, can't see worry. Drown the rat race with guitar licks. I drop the top down, leave the highway. Got the spirit of 66. My car got the road.
People in the United States, folks in their 40s, 50s, and 60s, and 70s, the ones that are alive, they are looking for that road that their parents used to go from the Midwest to the land of milk and honey in California, as it was said, where they said, once we get to California, we're going to have jobs, our lifestyle is going to change, it's going to be better. Because they had to leave their homes in the Midwest. It just got so dry, it didn't rain anymore. So these same people that are coming back, they were little boys and girls, even back in the 20s and 30s and 40s, 50s and 60s, I mean, decades. So they're all coming back telling me the same story. When I was a little boy, my parents, this is a highway that we had used to go to California, and now they're coming back, retracing their paths, looking for them, literally looking for themselves, and so happy that they are finding that road. Here's where we traveled, here's where we broke down, here's where our parents must have been destitute, and on and on.
There's something about the open road that has always beckoned to us. When the walls of the city close in around us, daily deadlines and pressures loom over our heads, and we sit in rapidly overheating cars, inching along in bumper-to-bumper rush-hour traffic. We succumb yet again to yearning for the life that exists in towns, beyond the last exit ramps, smog layers, and the reach of our pagers and cellular phones. Exhausted, daydreaming minds produce visions of wide-open spaces, friendly faces, and strange yet familiar places. Restaurants that serve bottomless cups of coffee, blue plate specials, and fresh baked pie a la mode. Favorite old songs emanating from vintage jukeboxes. Conversation and connection with gentle men and women. And a simple but comfortable room at the end of each long day. For many, Route 66 has been that place of dreams fulfilled. America's Main Street, the Mother Road, a home on the road. All along the 2,400 plus well-worn miles that connect Chicago to LA, an indefinable spirit has pervaded. That of the Indians and pioneers over whose trails the route was constructed. Of those who left the Dust Bowl in desperation, loaded down with all earthly belongings and the faith, hope, and courage it takes to forge out a life from scratch, losing perhaps some of each along the way. And of the commiseration and can-do attitude in taking on the seemingly insurmountable, and eventual shared joys of families and friends in their triumph over the same. Now, in commemoration of the 66th birthday of Route 66, this series hopes to rekindle that spirit of wisdom and simplicity, of the appreciation of the accomplishments of the past, and of meeting head-on the challenges of the present. We do so by going back to the source, the people whose paths have crossed on Route 66.
All aboard!
I'd never leave this place. It's really nice. You know, you meet a little bit of everybody that's wanted to get away from everything, and as long as they don't bring it with them, this is the place to be.
We traveled it when it was, well, it was just a little better than dirt. And it was just like riding the old-fashioned rub board, you know, like you're doing laundry on. Well, that's what it was. You just kind of, you didn't drive from one end to the other, you just kind of bounced from one end to the other. But it was interesting because you went through every town. It took you a long time to get there because you had a lot of stops.
I was 13 years old, and I thought it was a highway to hell. You know, from that day forward, I never wanted to see Route 66.
So at night, us kids, we used to wait for the traffic to come in at night, and pretty soon the lights from the automobiles kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and they finally shone on us, and the reflection of us kids were on the wall, and we just jumped up and down, stomping each other's shadows. And that was such a highlight of our life.
You know, we used to live down on the old Highway 66 on this end of town here, on this side. And the highway used to come about 10 feet from our home.
See, they traveled here on Route 66, and they come through here for the memory.
People told me that now, when their parents brought them, they were just children. Now they have grown up and they're married and they're bringing their own children to see where the daddy took them in those days, which is Highway 66. So now they're bringing the children to travel the route they traveled when they were youngsters. And that's every day, every day, every day, every day. A lot of people.
One of those people was a young songwriter making his way west for a shot at the big time. Little did he know just how much effect Route 66 would have on his future.
This is almost the same car I drove out to California in 1946. A green Buick convertible 1941 that I bought with my first royalty check from a song that I'd written that none of you kids will remember called Daddy. I wanted a diamond ring. Then I worked with Tommy Dorsey, then 4.5 years in the Marine Corps, and I decided to come to California to write songs in this car. I remember it took 75 quarts of gas, or rather 75 quarts of oil to get to California. And we went first from Harrisburg to Pittsburgh on the Pennsylvania Turnpike. We stopped at a Howard Johnson's restaurant. We're having lunch when my wife at that time, Cynthia, said, "Why don't you write a song about Route 40, Bobby?" And I said, looking at the road map, I said, well, that would really be kind of silly because we're going to pick up 66 outside of Chicago and take that all the way into Los Angeles. So about 3 days later, we're driving along, and she looks over at me and said, "Get your kicks on Route 66. I said, "Oh, God, that's a great title. What a wonderful title." And I wrote half the song in the car. If you ever plan to motor west, travel my way, take the highway. So we got to Los Angeles, and unbelievably, 6 days after I got here, I met one of the great jazz musicians of all time. He was my idol, Nat King Cole. No one sang like he did. No one played the piano like he did. He was playing at the old Trocadero restaurant in Sunset Strip at a place called the King Cole Room. They had his own room for him. And they persuaded him to listen to some of my songs after his last set. And I got up in the bandstand. I'll never forget, it was on about a 2-foot riser. And I moved the piano bench back and fell over backwards. So, in any event, I played a song I'd written called Baby, Baby All the Time, because Nat Cole could say baby better than any other human being. So every other song I wrote after that, he said, "Oh, that baby song is so good. I like that baby song." And I thought to myself, where am I going to get a chance to play for Nat King Cole? You got to think of something. And I said, "Nat, I wrote half the song in the car coming out here. I've never even played it on the piano, but see if you like this." And if you ever plan to motor west? And he liked it to the extent that he got up the piano and played it himself. So I said, "All right, send me Baby, Baby All the Time, finish Route 66, and send me that, and I'll record them." If you ever plan to motor west, drive on my way, take the highway, that's the best. Get your kicks on Route 66. Well, it was a 2-lane highway. We went through stretches of desert. We went through mountains. We hit a blinding snowstorm outside of Amarillo, going into Oatman, just terrifying curves, hairpin turns. It really wasn't that good a route. It winds from Chicago to LA, more than 2,000 miles all the way. Get your kicks on Route 66. The first running job I got, I enlisted in the Marine Corps in March of 1941, expecting to be called when I graduated in June. When I wasn't called, I went to New York, and probably because of the success of Daddy, I managed to get an audition with Tommy Dorsey. He had the penthouse suite of the Brill Building, which is the home of Tin Pan Alley. All the publishers are there. And I auditioned for Tommy, Harry James, Cab Calloway, and Cy Oliver, the piano. I was really frightened, but I got the job for $75 a week. Sinatra was making $125 a week as the band vocalist. And I worked there until Pearl Harbor, and I was called in the Marine Corps. I was with the Black Marines. I was one of the first. They had never had blacks in the Marine Corps in 1942. The Marine Corps used to call the Marine Corps, would call themselves the exclusive branch of the service because they had no blacks. The Army had blacks, the Navy had blacks, but never the Marine. Then through pressure from Harry Hopkins and Eleanor Roosevelt, they got blacks into the Marine Corps, and I was one of the first 12 officers the day the first black came into the Marine Corps, and served with them all the time in Montford Point Camp, which is a part of Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, and eventually took a black company overseas with me, and I really loved the duty. It was just, it was wonderful. We didn't get a good piano player until we had about 10,000 men. So I always would play piano with a little orchestra. Eventually we had a bandmaster, we had a musician, trumpeter named Joe Wilder who had gone to Juilliard, and he was the bandmaster. We had some very, very talented guys. The most exciting thing about my first song, Daddy, when that was popular, was that Cab Calloway did it. I loved Cab Calloway. And the other thing, Ford had a symphony hour every Sunday night. And one of the features of the hour was they would do a symphonic arrangement of the #1 song in the country. And so they did a symphonic arrangement of Daddy. And I looked at my mother and I said, I'm Beethoven. Well, when I got my first royalty check, I went to the Buick dealer because the Buick was a very prestigious car, and bought this. I love the convertible, and I bought the green 1941 Buick convertible, and I bought my mother a 1941 black sedan. I was buying everybody Buicks. Missouri, Oklahoma City looks mighty pretty, you'll see. Amarillo, Gallup, New Mexico, Flagstaff, Arizona, don't forget Winona. I think so. Somebody said, why don't you use Albuquerque? Which is, I think the most prophetic town in the song. I wrote it because it rhymed with Arizona. Flagstaff, Arizona, don't forget Winona. I wrote Winona because it rhymed with Arizona. But as it turned out, Winona is so small and I think it has just one post office, about 300 people. And don't forget Winona would really be realistic because you could forget Winona. You wouldn't even know you drove through it. Don't forget Winona, Cayman, Boston, San Bernardino, you get hip to this timely tip. When you make that California trip. And I'm driving with my Buick with the top down, the radio playing, and going about 75 miles an hour when a cop pulled me up over it. He said, you're going awful fast, weren't you? I said, yeah, I guess I was. He said, may I see your license? I said, certainly. So he took the license and says, are you the kid that wrote Daddy? I said, yeah. He said, well, look, travel a little more carefully from here on, okay? So it got me out of a parking ticket, or rather a speeding ticket. Get your kicks on Route 66. Get your kicks on Route 66. Kicks on Route 66.
This is the historic Beale Hotel in Kingman, Arizona, where I spent most of my youth. It's a great place and means a lot to me. This is where I spent my first night in Kingman, 1926. I was 6 years old, and we'd just come in from Washington, D.C. in a car. The pavement ended in Kansas. The mountains around Colorado were very impressive to a 6-year-old, as you might imagine, and seeing the Indians, of course. I pretty much grew up here in this hotel, and from age 10 to 14 or so, I would be behind this desk frequently, checking tourists in, checking them out in the morning, trying to figure out the telephone switchboard, which I never really mastered. I had a Saturday evening post route on my bicycle, and the headquarters were here in the hotel. The bundles of magazines would be dumped in the alley and back, and one week the garbage man got them first. I had to go out to the garbage dump to retrieve them and never told my customers where they had been. When I was 9 years old, Charles Lindbergh was here overnight, and my grandmother phoned the house and said, "Get Carlos on his bicycle, there's a telegram to be delivered." So I had the thrill of doing that and meeting the great man. I hoped he hadn't realized the telegram was an hour or so late because I had to do the delivery. He gave me a quarter, which I cherished for many years. The Beale Hotel was really the Ritz and Waldorf of northern Arizona in its day, and certainly the center of life in Kingman. And I recall seeing the great Lincoln limousine of Greta Garbo, although I didn't get to see her. I remember Death Valley Scotty standing by the staircase with his distinctive red necktie, which was his trademark. He was one of the great legends of the West. He was a promoter, essentially. Found a rich man, Mr. Johnson from Chicago, who grub-staked him to build a castle in Death Valley, which is still a wonderful thing to visit. And Scotty had great tales of his gold mines, none of which had any ring of truth to it. And many other celebrities were here at the Beale. The favorite places at the Beale Hotel are 3 in number. The soda fountain, of course, for obvious reasons. The magazine rack, which had all kinds of pulp magazines that sold for $0.10 a piece. The Shadow, Doc Savage, Wings, G8 and his War Aces. So I read them all. And then downstairs in another part, away from the sump, was my pool table and my darkroom. I guess my first camera cost all of 59 cents. It was a small, very small format thing. But then I graduated to a $12.50 Argus, which was quite a remarkable thing for its day, around 1936. And then I graduated to a more elegant $15 Argus. I still have the lesser priced one, which was an awfully good 35 millimeter camera. Then I started shooting bigger film while I was in college, and it was that bigger film that led to the Arizona Highways pictures in 1940. This was the first book that I published in 1967. And it was entirely pictures of mine that had been in Arizona Highways magazine. And now I have 10 books and devote most of my effort to publishing. I had the great privilege of meeting Ansel Adams for the first time in 1973 at Yosemite. He was giving workshops annually, and then in 1967, he had a workshop in Santa Cruz that led to this book, which is called 12 Days in Santa Cruz. Ansel was a very kind man. He hated to downplay anyone's work. I remember one photo session where he was inspecting prints, and one really gave him pause, and he finally said, "My, that is a handsome frame." But sure, he would give all kinds of ideas of how to do it more efficiently. He was the father of the zone system of photography. His books are the classics in the field of how to do photography right. I was in the office of Mr. Peter Brawl at Kodak, who purchased pictures for Kodak. And while I was there, he got a phone call, and that was Ansel Adams on the line. Ansel had been sent to Death Valley to do some photography for Kodak, and Mr. Brawl would say, "No, Ansel, that isn't what we had in mind at all." And my spirits rose. Even Ansel didn't come through occasionally. In my Grand Canyon book, there are 4 of us represented. The other 3 are fellow Arizona Highways photographers. Joseph Munch. Joe's only 88 now, but he's still out there charging around for Arizona Highways. Wonderful guy. Then we did foreign language versions of that book in 6 languages total. This is Bodega by the Bay in Northern California, where the movie The Birds was photographed. The building in the background is the schoolhouse. My Profiles of America Hastings House book was printed in England, and the typesetter sent in approved, and the headline they did said, "They went away." I said, "No, that's not quite right. The headline is, "They went that away." The Little Colorado River down in the desert near Holmbrook, Arizona. This shows what the desert does to a running stream. My caption said, "It sure doesn't taste like tomato juice." One of the great sights of this area is London Bridge, transported from its home in London and reconstructed block by block. Looks very much at home now in its desert setting, showing sunset at Lake Havasu. So this is a camera that gets only 4 pictures on a roll of film. Well, again, Ansel had the term for it. He called it the compulsion to shoot. You don't know, it's just there, and if you know what you're doing, instantly you say, "This is it." The favorite photo is always the next one to shoot. There's so much wonderful things to see. Arizona, for example, I haven't seen all of it by a long shot. And every trip shows new and wonderful things.
We were running out of gas and had just thought, okay, this is it. We're not going to make it. And all of a sudden we just capped a little rise in the road and looked down the road and saw a single light bulb burning. It was just at dusk, and it happened to be an old store that had 1 gas pump out front, 1 light bulb hanging over it, and we coasted. We just coasted the last few miles into the gas station, and he was still open. So it wasn't as easy to travel across 66 years ago as it is now by any means.
We learned to drive on old 66, and like at 14, which really wasn't quite legal even then, but they kind of bend the rules a little bit in those days. And this fella down here, I was dating at the time, and I hadn't been driving very long. Yeah, this guy down here. We hadn't been dating very long. I was 14, I think he was 16, and I had my dad's car, and I think we had a little squabble or something going on. Anyway, we were going down the road, and I was driving, of course, with my dad's car, and got sideswiped. Of course, that's what I say. The car came over the other side of the road. But anyway, we had a hard time explaining that, but we decided we'd just have to face up to it, and that's what kids did in those days. They just took their lumps, so we went back to the house and...
We switched drivers very quickly because you didn't have a driver.
he took the lumps.
Ever told us.
Actually, he took the lumps, you know, because I couldn't take the lumps, so he took them for me.
There's a old bar downtown there. It was Skylark, the last name on it. It was Bus and Bills at one time. And there was Bus Mead was the guy that had the original bar across the street, and it was across 66. And they were going to tear the building down, so and Bus bought the new place. So he just takes all the patrons in the middle of the day, and they moved this bar right in the middle of 66 across. Well, I think right in the middle they got tired, so they all stopped and had a drink, and had the highway blocked and everything else.
This US 66 at one time, for a long time, held the record for having the highest accident and death toll in the country.
I still, when I go down the road, I remember Daddy, he'd drive right down that center line because there was no traffic coming. He said, well, that way, you know, I got plenty of room to maneuver. So he'd just drive the car right down the center line, across the desert, on 66 at night.
There's a lot of sites to see if you're looking for them. You know, everybody's got to each his own.
Well, I'm going to tell about in 37, 38, not too many places that teenagers could go dancing, and several of the kids in town had cars and had radios. So we'd throw a broom in the trunk of the car or whatever and go out to one of the bridges on 66, and you'd sweep the gravel off the bridge and turn the radio up loud and dance on the bridge.
In coming into its own as a main thoroughfare, Route 66 quickly began feeling severe growing pains. Folks had traveling fever, couldn't seem to get anywhere fast enough, and 66 was bypassed by the burgeoning interstate highway system.
There was 9,000 automobiles going by here every 24 hours. Lots of traffic. People were in such a hurry to go from Chicago to Albuquerque or vice versa, and the people then there was so much traffic, it was congestion, you know. They had to stop for all these little towns, Kingman, Peach Springs, and Truxton, and Ashford, and Williams, and Flagg. They were so tired, so the public could not wait for the interstates to open up, and finally they did, and they got their wish. They could travel from point A to point B, and zap, the traffic just literally stopped.
When we got bypassed here, that happened October the 9th, 1979. It was about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I always remember the date. I wrote it down on the books, and I can't believe it. You know, here you watching the traffic going by there, you know, just trucks and everything, and just 1 minute, all this traffic going by, and then the next minute,
like somebody shut the water off.
Like they shut the water off on concert. I look out there and I thought, my God, I just got the lump here, you know, that it's going to be like this from now on, because, you know, for 25 years, you're watching the traffic going by, and it just snap is gone. And I thought, oh, I remember just the chills in my body, and I thought, oh, we're not going to last here very long.
It seemed like when he got assassinated, President Kennedy, seemed like the wind was blowing. The tumbleweeds, I'll remember it forever. The wind was blowing north, and the tumbleweeds on Floyd Street were, it was just sad. And the same thing happened again when we got bypassed by I-40. The traffic stopped. But this time, the traffic didn't come back.
It was hard. We thought we were going to have to close our businesses.
A feeling? Feeling, boy, you have to experience it to know what I'm talking to you or telling you about it. It was a feeling of being let down, a feeling of losing what you had worked for so many years, a feeling of where can I go, what can I do. That's a feeling that I will never forget.
We were so tired, but we wanted to get to the new state, and we bumped into Route 66 and found an old ghost town called San Juan. It's spelled J-O-N. And we got there at nighttime. We didn't realize what it was. When we woke up, we realized it was a completely desolate town and had one hotel and several old buildings that were boarded up and condemned. And we happened to break down. Our muffler fell apart. And so we fell off. Had a tow truck pick us up in San Juan, and he drove us
we waited a while in San Juan.
Yeah, drove to Tucumcari, and we asked him what happened to his town. It looked like it had a nuclear fallout.
I know, it was awful. Like the service station right across like when you're standing in the hotel doorway, you look out, and there's some buildings right across the way from you, and then beyond it's just flat land with just these chaparral bushes beyond.
A few lonely dogs running around.
Right, and there was a service station right across from us, but it was all kind of boarded up, and you could see like people had just stuffed tons of junk inside it. So it was like the windows were filled up to the rim with just junk. And then when I was in the lobby of the little hotel, I saw some postcards, and they were all really old looking. Like they looked like they were from they were Mexican postcards, sort of, so they're really old, they weren't new. And saw this one really large postcard of the Main Street mural in San Juan. And at first I thought, oh wow, maybe, San Juan actually is this cute little town near, kind of near the Mexican border. And it would be nice to kind of drive through and see it if it wasn't for that we were broken down and had to get a tow truck. But then as we were being towed out, I saw the mural on the wall, because we were actually on Main Street, and it was all kind of chipped and faded and stuff, and didn't look at all like it did in the picture. And that's when I kind of thought, San Juan is kind of deteriorated since they took all those pictures.
Yeah,
and then we asked the tow truck driver.
The tow truck driver told us that the death of 66 caused the death of the town.
Yeah.
I was happy when it moved, because you see, this was obsolete. You know, when you live as long as I have, you can see things that go obsolete, and you've got to change it. You've got to move, do something else. You can't stop progressing.
You know, I think I like the way it is now. Easier, you know, all this. The traffic goes by is mostly people that they're going to stop looking for something. They're looking for, you know, for place to eat or a gas station or something like that, or just look at the town. Now, this year especially, people follow Route 66. This is the big thing this year. Finally, I knew from those days, the day is going to come that people's going to look for Route 66. And it's happening now. It's happening in a big way.
Well, it's a different feeling now, that's for sure. Different feeling now. Why? Well, I feel like I'm alive again. I feel like I'm doing what I was supposed to do from the beginning.
Yeah, my name's Robert Allison. I'm from Two Guns, Arizona. And this cave here we know of is over 5 miles long. And the history of it that we know of is that there was 42 Apaches that were killed in here by the Navajos. And the main entrance is right over here, but then there was, I'm trying to remember the first owner that found it. Well, he found the skulls of the Navajos, and so he decided to make a little profit off it, which he did. They call it the Cave of Death, that they feel that anybody that owns the property, something's going to happen. Because there's been several owners that, the one owner, well, he disappeared, and they found him when they started building Route 66. They found 2 bullet holes in it. And then the other guy that had the service station over here, well, he was mauled by a mountain lion, survived that. Then he was mauled by a lynx, then his daughter died, then the place burnt down. And so he gave up the business. And so it's been over 20 years that this place has been open. So we're going to try reopening. Well, I carry a pistol to protect myself. Of course, I'm not afraid of any spooks or anything. Of course, the Indian lore, I respect it, but I feel that this day and age shouldn't have to be afraid of Indian lore. You know, supernatural takes care of its own. Inside there's some rooms that where the Navajos made up, and then in the 1800s earthquake come along and kind of caved it in, so to speak. But it's we're going to try reopening the main entrance and where people can walk through, and we're going to have people that know caves go back in and find out more, see if there's any more skulls or anything else. far as we know, this fort is called Two Guns. And it was built back in the late 1700s, early 1800s. And they had fights with the Apaches and some of the Navajos and a few other tribes. I don't know what the names were. But then they ended up, after it was demolished or they give up on it, well, then it ended up being an animal zoo. The service station over here, well, he was mauled by a mountain lion, survived that. Then he was mauled by a lynx, then his daughter died, then the place burnt down. And so he gave up the business. I don't know, I walk around here every day and I just get the feeling of the spirit, you know, and the life that used to be here. And I can't ever get tired of it, because there's a feeling here. There's still life, you know, because you feel it in the wind, you feel it when you walk through the arches, you know, in the fort, and here you still feel that something's here. A lot of times it's hard to explain, but there is a spirit here, something, a magnet.
You'd go down even at Williams, and Saturday nights you'd go down there and everybody parked down the street and you visit one another. The men would go in the pool hall and the women would sit out and they'd go to each other's cars and sit there and gab with each other right on 66. And Mr. Letts, he used to have the ice cream parlor there. And the old-timers would know him. Now, he was ahead of his time. He was growing his hair. He'd lost his hair, and he had one queue. And it got long and long, and he used to twirl it around and around and make a little mat upon his head. And we never said nothing. We all go down to this thing, because Mr. Letts had this little, and if he got excited and the little hair was slipping, why, he'd pull it back up, and we didn't say a thing. We just looked up there, because we wouldn't get the milkshake.
Anybody new that came to town, I'd see them driving around there looking for somebody. Well, I didn't know the street address, but I'd say, who are you looking for? And they'd tell me, and I'd say, follow me, and drive from one side of town to the other to take them to that house. Well, if they ended up moving here, I had another milk customer. And in those days, people didn't lock their houses. They left notes in the glass milk bottles. And they'd say, stir the beans, or check the roast, or put the milk in the refrigerator or the ice boxes. You did a lot of different things for people when you delivered milk.
They really, really like the fact that we are so much more neighborly, a small community. You know, we're just so much neighborly. We say hello, good morning. We sit out there on the bench. We wave at the tourists go by. And even that, in the summertime, like right now, we'll sit out there and we wave, and they look back, and someone wave back, and they realize suddenly, my gosh, look, they wave here in Seligman there.
Along that line, I think the most memorable thing about this area, and Kingman specifically, is the care and the compassion and the willingness of people to help others. I know that as I grew up here, I lived with 6 different families before I got to high school, and including high school, I guess. But there was always somebody that would stick out a helping hand or willing to take in another person. I stayed with Willie Jones, his family. He was the deputy that was mentioned earlier about intervening with the Tong Wars. And their family took me in. I lived with them about a year and a half. They had 5 daughters and 2 sons, and they made room for me.
People from the cities, they have little children, and the first thing those kids does, just like my grandchildren, they run around town, because they can't do it in the big city. They're all cooped up in one little house, you know, there's no yard. And here they go from one end to the town or the other with, you know, they just enjoy that kind of stuff like that.
I was teaching in Flagstaff, and so many of the children I had were from ranches. So we were reading a story one day about Robin Hood, and to sort of get the children into the mood, we were looking at the pictures. And there was a picture of a forest with pretty green grass. One of the children said, "What is this?" And he kept pointing to the green, and I said, "It's grass." And he said, "Grass in the woods?" And I thought that was so funny because they weren't used to seeing an eastern forest that would have grass on the ground. All they knew was rocks and dirt and dust under the pine trees.
Oh, years ago, we'd all get up at night and go up in the mountain over. There'd be a little pond there, you know. We'd build a fire there, ice skating, build a fire in the middle and skate around it, you know. And naturally, we had to take a little bit of wine with us, which was illegal. But yeah, that's all we done. There was nothing to do here.
And it just seems that cities have gotten so busy and impersonal. It's hard to find someone to be there when you need them.
It seemed really small. Like we met people in this little diner that we ate at, and when we got off the road, we stopped and checked our oil, and they thought we were broken down. And 2 sets of people stopped on the way out of town to help us that we'd seen in the little diner. So we thought, oh, you know, people must be pretty nice here because no one else was stopping. And we've had 5 breakdowns, and people don't usually stop for us.
It's the pace, the desert. I'm, you know, Rocky Mountains is my home, so it's kind of different lifestyle, but I'm enjoying it. I used to work a lot in the city. I got tired of the pace, the rat race, the 80 hours a week, busting your butt for a salary that didn't pay diddly. So coming out here, making an honest living, you know, it's just a different lifestyle altogether. Give a chance to think and figure out what you want to do.
We met some really interesting people along the way, like the people that we met in the diner in San Juan. I mean, no, that was in Tucumcari. I mean, they were just really interesting. They looked like real Mexican-American cowboys. And I mean, that's what we're doing this trip for, is to meet people that come from different places, that have different backgrounds. And we always try to ask them, like, how do you like to live in this town, and what do you think of it? Like
the corner bar, the highway runs right here in the corner bar. This was the Central Commercial Building before the highway was widened. Here's where we used to sit and talk back and forth. The diner, you came right out of the movie house here. The Black Cat Bar, the old Black Cat Bar. Gosh, what a place right in here. Bowling alley right here, and the Chinaman's Cafe right here, and the canopy of the Olson's garage had to go, and gosh, history, history, history. Here's where we were the stars then, and we waved at the tourists going by during the war as kids, and you get lonesome for this. I literally get lonesome for this. We lost so much. Now the gazebo sits right here, and it's so wide anymore. It's still homegrown.
Winslow is a major city along Route 66. The fact that it's a major railroad division point, and of course Santa Fe Railroad parallels Route 66 through Arizona, we have had sort of the best of both worlds.
And I much prefer a small town. It's much easier to get around. People are usually more easygoing. Just a spirit of friendliness.
I've always told everybody I was the girl in Flatbed Port from day one.
Winslow has been good to us.
And I think it's the greatest town I've ever been in.
One, so she's a friend of mine.
the uniqueness of the neighborly people in a small town such as ours is, I didn't realize it. I thought the rest of the world was like this, but no, it isn't.
Well, that's it for this leg of the trip. It's been a full day, and time is drawing nigh for turning in. As for what's down the road on the Spirit of 66, here's a small glimpse. And keep the spirit.
There was a steady stream of cars with just everybody broke and busted and broke down, and mattresses on top of the cars. And we had used tires, they sold them for 50 cents a piece. It was pitiful.
I wrote to President Roosevelt a letter, and it was answered. And he did get on WPA.
Everybody likes a nice cafe with good food, you know. I'm not much for that fast food, are you?
When I started the business, people used to come out and trade chickens and ham and bacon and a bag of potatoes for a carnival ride.
So we went 14 miles side by side, but fortunately nobody was going the other direction, but neither one of us had let up.
Yeah, I sold 2 fan belts to everybody that came through town. We've had characters in this town. It's famous for all sorts of things. It really, and still today, it remains a kind of a rough at the edges.
She was a nice person who just had a bad habit of cattle rustling.
To me, there's nothing impossible. All you've got to do is to want to do it bad enough, and you'll come up with the answer. That's been me all my life.